meeting to order. Maybe the clerk can do roll call.
Okay, Chair Farmer.
Here.
Vice Chair Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Ziotti.
Here.
Commissioner Pallison.
Here.
And Commissioner McNamee.
Here.
Thank you, Sherry. I just want to make sure that the proper notice has been placed for this meeting.
Yes, proper notice has been established.
Perfect. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on matters that are not otherwise part of this agenda but are related to this committee?
Chair, there are no public comments at this time.
Okay. Sounds good. So let's move on to staff updates. Looking for public input regarding communities of interest, including the maps.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Sherry Johnson. Well, I have one potential changes for district rebalancing. I'll just do a brief summary. This has been saved to the redistricting site. So this also has pros and cons. I will not go into all that information. I'll just highlight. So this is suggestions, potential changes. So decreasing the size of District 5, returning Hopland to District 1, move Mendocino census designated place to District 4, expand District 2 north somewhat, expand District 2 somewhat south, and the next topic is this decreasing population District 3, move Laytonville to District 4, move parcels south of Willits into District 1, explore moving District 3's western boundary east without including Laytonville. And that is our public comment that we have for this item. And as I stated, all of the commissioners have received this information in an email, and it is also on site for the public.
Thank you, Sherry. That was a very clear and concise public comment. Moving on to Charlotte for now, are there any changes to the deadlines for the redistricting process at this point?
Thank you, Chair Farmer. There are no changes to report. We still have the same current deadlines that we have been working with since the beginning.
Thank you very much. Do we have any commissioner comment? And I would also like to point out that we will be specifically discussing maps with maps in front of us. And this particular public comment would be really great to sort of cross-reference against some of the maps that we're going to see, especially Leaf's efforts. So we can certainly talk about the public comment now, but we should definitely be coming back to this as well in that section. Go ahead, Dee.
I just wanted to touch on the conversation that we had last time. The information received from Charlotte and Leaf about the 10% difference between the lowest and the highest population of districts. And the repeated, the repeated statement that we should stay closer to 5%, 3% better. What I was hearing was, we like to stay at 5%, 3% is even better. And I'd like to know who we is, because everything I've read says 10%. And it says you can even go over 10% if you can justify it. So anyway, I'd just like to know, where is that just historic? Is that why that keeps coming up? Or is there direction from somebody telling us to stay below the 10%, closer to 3 to 5%?
And that 3 on either side is 6, right? When we've been 3 on either side, that's actually 6.
Well, the way I read it is between the lowest and the highest, there can be up to a 10% difference.
Yeah.
So not on either side, just between the, the top, the one with the least amount of population and the one with the most population. But I felt like we kept hearing this 3 to 5% last time. So I just want that clarified. That's all.
Leif, would you like to respond to that?
Certainly. I don't think I said we, but what that comes from in my experience is that you're right. You can go up to 10%. I guess you would call it historic, but every redistricting process that I've been in, we've tried to stay within 3% or less of the deviation from the average, which puts us safely below that 10%. And the reasoning is that it gives us a cushion for making it more difficult for people to litigate against the plan in the end. In other words, people may be upset with this plan on many different levels. And, individuals and organizations can come in and challenge your plan in court. What you're going to find in a lot of the seminars that are put on by county organizations are going to advise you to be under that 10%. And I said it, being county administration, okay, when we as county staff make recommendations to the board on, is this a valid plan? Is it a good plan? We're going to look at that and advise them of that. They don't have to follow that. You certainly don't. You're right. And what I know is that you're supposed to hopefully stay 10% or below. And if you go over, then, I would refer to Charlotte on, how you're going to justify that legally. But I guess if I would refer to we, it would be the staff, because we're looking at one of the things that we have to be cognizant of is, are we putting forward a plan that's legally sustainable? So I hope that answers your question, and that's where it's coming from, at least in my experience.
Please go ahead. Let's hear from Charlotte and then Peter.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Commission. So the 10% is based on case law. So when people have challenged redistricting and the issue of complying with the federal criteria, which we also have incorporated in our state law, but the federal criteria of substantially equal population based on the constitutional principle of one person, one vote. The case law is what created this more leeway. A 10%, the 10% comes from that case law, and it's only in regards to local redistricting efforts. So, for example, the states and the federal congressional districts don't have that ability. I can do more research and try to give you a more detailed presentation on that for the next meeting. I'm not prepared to, fully explain the context of that, but I think with the fact that there is a very clear guidance and it's in our state law that our districts have to have substantially equal population, I think any challenge based on that, if we were to go over that 10%, it would be looking at how are we substantially equal if we have such a large variance. But again, it isn't a There isn't a magic number. We don't necessarily need to have a target for a certain percentage, but it is something that as staff at the county level, we're going to make sure the board is aware of and that you're aware of, because it is the county board of supervisors that makes the ultimate decision, and we would want to provide the analysis for your commission and the board of supervisors to then make the determination on various maps and how much of a deviation that your commission and the board of supervisors is comfortable with. And if you would like to direct me to do that more detailed analysis, I can. It may be a little bit, it may just be kind of what I've already told you, which is there is some case law that based on challenges that has determined 10% is a threshold. But I don't know how much case law there is on it. So it would always be sort of here's the analysis from case law, and it depends on a court's interpretation based on a future potential challenge. We can't really predict how a court would rule, and we can't really predict whether we would even get a challenge. But we do have a very clear mandate from the state law that says we must have substantially equal population.
Peter, please go ahead.
I want to go back to the public comment we got from Mary, because I had some questions. Can we do that? Oh, good. So on page 2, item 2, move Mendocino CDP to District 4. I don't know what CDP actually means in terms of geographic area.
The census designated place.
The whole community of Mendocino? Is that what you're talking about?
Mhm. Yes. I'm sorry, it wasn't clear.
Okay. Well, that helps me understand that. And then on item number, well, let's see. Item number 4, the numbering is a little confusing. It says expand District 2 somewhat south. And then the next page says decreasing population District 3. Is that supposed to be item number 5?
No, it's a different problem.
Oh, I see. These are like a
What I
difference. Increasing the size of District 5 is one problem. Decreasing population District 3 is another problem. Okay. I guess the thing is, what struck me now that I sort of understand what you're saying better is, if moving the village of Mendocino in District 4 seems only somewhat necessary if it's predicated on the notion of moving Hopland into District 1. And I guess I'm a little concerned about how people would feel if, I just want to raise a concern that people might interpret it that way, that the only reason from a population distribution standpoint that you would have to move the village of Mendocino into District 4 would be because you had moved Hopland into District 1, and therefore, well, I guess I don't even understand that, because it seems to me that it seems like you're decreasing the population in District 5 substantially by doing both of those things. So I would just raise a sort of flag.
Dot, if you move Mendocino up to District 4, you increase the numbers of District 4,
Right, but you
which we are,
substantially
they
decrease
are.
the numbers in District 5. Yeah, okay. That helps clarify at least the
Response,
thought.
which
And then
you'll see
lastly,
that was considered,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
go ahead. Now I don't remember.
Okay. Well,
I think,
who's
Mary,
up
I think
first?
you were about to say that that was considered in 2010 and that the community at the time expressed disagreement with that
Great,
community of
I'm
interest
happy.
designation.
Yes.
Okay.
However, if we may need to.
Well, I guess the issue for me is that District 5 really isn't population-wise much out of variance. This existing population is pretty close to the average that we're shooting for as it stands now. So these seem like pretty significant changes. But I want to go to a different issue, which is decreasing population District 3, move Laytonville into District 4. And I thought this was very good, what you laid out in terms of the pros and the minuses. I would just add another thought here, which keeps striking me, and I keep trying to figure out how to do this. Along the northern boundary of the county, because of the way our roads are laid out and the quality of our roads, there's a section along the northern boundary where the residents in that area actually feel probably more affinity with Southern Humboldt than they do to places like Willits or Ukiah, simply because they can stream onto Highway 101 and it's a pretty fast, straight shot to do your shopping or go get medical or whatever up Highway 1 to places like Eureka. And so I would just add that as a consideration that we should probably have in mind as we're redrawing those maps for the 4th and the 3rd districts, that there is that segment of the population at the very north end of the county that it's faster for them to go to places in Southern Humboldt to do shopping and to get services. And many times there even public safety issues, the response comes from Southern Humboldt faster than it does from Mendocino County, just because of the way the roads are set up. So I would add that as a consideration in terms of the Laytonville area is kind of that borderline. And I just think it's worth pondering a bit in terms of how those lines are drawn. So, but thank you very much for this. This was a great, step in the right direction as far as I'm concerned, in terms of laying
Mary,
it
I
out.
go ahead.
Yeah. Part of public comment, so much of public comment, was the feeling that District 5 was too large, unwieldy, and they would like to see it smaller. Can I divide it in half? No. Can I take some sections? Yes. So mostly what I was responding to there was not the numbers, but the amount of public comment we had on that issue.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to say one
You're
thing,
welcome.
especially about kind of Dee's comments, but all of these is just a reminder to everybody, we are going to draft 3 to 4 maps. So, and then they will all also be decided on by the Board of Supervisors. So I think certainly we should be looking at one map that pushes the boundaries of that 10% rule, not necessarily exceeding it, because I don't think we need to open up any legal things, in my own opinion, though Dee, you could argue otherwise. But that could be one of the maps that sort of values the community of interests equal to the population data, and the other three could be more traditional. That's the right word. But Paula, you have your hand raised and you haven't said anything yet.
Mike, was a question for Peter. So when you're talking about the northern boundary of the county, were you talking about having Humboldt County annex part of that area into their county? I was a little unclear what your kind of outcome was. I would agree that they have more of an affinity with Humboldt. We haven't heard from anybody, excuse me, that far up, but what was the kind of the solution?
Well, it's not, no, there's no intent on my part to suggest changing the county boundary line. But when you actually look at the communities of Percy and you look at the communities of Leggett, the people that live in those communities and in the surrounding areas along the border of the northern part of our county and southern Humboldt, where their affinity is. In other words, where do they go shop? When they need to go to a doctor, where do they go? When somebody responds to an emergency, who responds? Who arrives the quickest to them? And I guess I have a better sense of this because I'm in the fourth than maybe other people do. I don't know, but my sense is that that is a group of people. It's a community of interest because rather than looking to Ukiah or to Willits, because of the way the roads are constructed and the difficulties getting from where they're at down to those places, they instead look for services and for consumer goods across the line into southern Humboldt. If you live in Percy, where would you go shop? Would you drive down to the Costco in Ukiah, or would you hop on 101, which is a 4-lane straight shot to Eureka? You probably go to Eureka. I mean, I don't know, but I think a lot of people do, rather than drive a lot of 101, which is 2-lane and pretty twisty and windy through the groves. So there are portions of District 3 that are very similar in that regard because they're of the way the drainage basins are constructed, and so I'm sort of thinking there's an affinity of interest along the northern border, and that might be something to take into consideration when you look at the boundary lines between, say, District 4 and District 3.
Makes sense.
Does that make sense if I
Okay,
answered
but
that question?
It makes sense. I don't think it
think
answered my
if-
question. So the resolution would be whether they stay in Mendocino County or not. I mean, definitely, I know for sure there's health centers and all kinds of services north of Mendocino County, which are easier for people to access. I definitely agree with that. But what I wasn't clear, and I still don't know that I am, what do you do with them? Do you annex them out, or that was it? Just, did you have another solution in mind for those?
Paul, if I can maybe interpret Peter, what I understood, and he can tell me if I'm wrong, is that he is considering the idea that the boundary between District 3 and District 4, sort of north of Laytonville, wherever that community of interest sort of begins, the Humboldtian Mendocinites, that you would then, that the District 4 would kind of start meandering east and take out a chunk of District 3, as instead of looking further south to remedy those disparities in population. Is that what you're saying, Peter?
Yeah, I think if I can amplify just a
Okay.
little bit on that, the idea would be that whoever the supervisor is that represents those people needs to be sensitive to the fact that they need to coordinate with Humboldt County in the delivery of services. So I think that there's that that supervisor who represents that community of interest. And if they're all in one district, right now, a big chunk of them are in the 4th district. So it might make sense to consolidate the ones that are in the 3rd district with the ones that are in the 4th district, in order to whoever that supervisor would be, that part of their role would be to collaborate and coordinate with Humboldt County in ensuring that Mendocino, the people in Mendocino who seek services in that county are represented, and reach out to that county. I hope that clarifies what my intent is.
Yeah, somewhat. I don't know what the difference would be between District 3 and 4. I mean, as far as representation, I understand the part about moving populations around, but I'm willing to look at it and think about it more.
Leaf?
Well, just a point of clarification, the redistricting process would have nothing to do with changing county boundaries. So that's a whole nother process. And if that helps clarify that, and I think Peter just explained his intent very clearly, and I didn't want to throw too much more in there, but just the fact that this process, whatever we do, isn't going to change county boundaries, if that was a concern. Thank you.
Dee, I think your hand's been raised the longest.
I just want to go back to my original question, and maybe if we could direct staff, Charlotte, I guess, to bring back a little bit more information on this 10%. What I'm concerned about is the Latinx population in Ukiah. Right now, we have the Ukiah area split into 3 different districts. And I'm just wondering, we haven't heard from them other than the first time when Mayor Roscoe was on. I'm just wondering if that's could possibly pose a problem, that we split that community that in the greater Ukiah area into 3 separate districts. So I would like to know, what case law is there about the 10%? And if we were to present a map that included an area of Ukiah that encompassed the entire Ukiah, greater Ukiah area, where the population was higher than the rest of our districts, what kind of a justification will we need for that, as if we decide that that's one of our options?
Charlotte?
I can understand. I understand the direction that you want to hear more details about the 10%. So I can definitely give a little short presentation on where that comes from, and look into that for sure. And and in terms of the concern regarding the Latinx population in Ukiah, I think I'm unclear on whether the concern is, so when we're mapping communities of interest, it's groups of population in the same area. So so it wouldn't be the percentage of the total population, it would be the sections of a map where communities of interest are together. And the communities of interest could be, one characteristic could be Latinx or ethnicity or race, in addition to other socioeconomic factors. I'm just unclear on how it relates to the direction to provide you more information on the 10%.
If I may, in the document, the local government redistricting toolkit, a resource for California's local governments, it gives a really clear description there on the avoid splitting a population where they could have a majority vote in one district and we split them so that they have a very small minority in multiple districts. So it takes their voice away. And I just would like us to look at that realistically when it comes to the greater Ukiah area. And as a group, if we agree that this is something we should address, I just want to make sure that we're within our legal boundaries. Just the way it's explained, I feel like our current district lines impacts that community in the greater Ukiah area. It may be to its detriment, but I am not even sure if they are concerned about it or if it's just, I'm the only one that's concerned about it, but I just think it's something that we should look at. The other community of interest is our Indigenous peoples populations and how our current districts divides the local tribes. And it may take away a voice, or at least, or even diminish a voice. And we may want to look at a better way so that they feel that their representation is equal and they have the ability to be heard. I just don't want us to just focus on population or percentages and not think about the communities. I think it'd be really easy just to say, okay, we're pretty close now with a number of people, and just not really take the opportunity to look at how our different communities are represented. I think we would be remiss if we didn't do that. So that's why I just keep bringing it up. But I would appreciate a little bit more information from Charlotte, maybe at the next meeting, about just how far we can go with this.
Thank you, Dee. Mary, you've had your hand raised.
A couple of things. District 2 might be able to absorb, say, the Southern, in that it would help blend the Latinx community. Particularly, you have to look at the numbers when you get it done, because you don't look at it from District 5. So it's possible. In terms of Native people, that is one of my concerns with Laytonville, as well as the health structure in Laytonville, but that the Native population would be perhaps divided more. So I see those points. I also like Peter's idea of moving that district boundary between 4 and 3 a little bit to the east. So just comments.
Well, I think definitely when we get into looking at the map, it will be great to get some of these numbers, especially, what would it look like to have Ukiah unified? Especially that one little 300 person chunk on the bottom is just ridiculous. That little bite. You got to do something about that. Mary, do you still have your hand raised on purpose, or just?
No, my mistake.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we will definitely continue to talk about all this in the mapping section. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay, so let's move on to the community of interest testimony. Looks like we'll find out if there's anybody interested in doing a live community of interest testimony.
No public comment at this time.
I do think that when we should just make some really controversial ideas and get people mad so they start commenting.
I don't think we should do that. It may just because I'm old and I've been through those things before.
That's how politics works now, man.
Where's my
so I
my
guess,
blood
is there any
pressure
commissioner
medication?
comment on that lack of public comment other than my jokes? Mary?
Go ahead, sorry. Raise my hand.
I thought there might be some comment in Mendocino Voice when the supervisor for District 5 gave his monthly report. He pointed out that there is a big discrepancy in numbers, particularly in District 5, and that some of those numbers would have to be reduced. And he really encouraged people, if you want to participate and have a say in this, you need to contribute. So I was hoping that somebody would start participating. Maybe it's a little too early after that notice came out.
Go ahead, Dee.
Thank you.
I was just going to say that I just wrote a note to myself. I think I'm going to reach out to a couple of the leaders in the Latinx community in Ukiah, the Ukiah area, just to get some feedback from them. And I'll bring it back to the next meeting just to see if this is an issue for that population, for that community.
Sounds good.
That's good.
Okay. So agenda item number 5 is to review the current boundaries for equal population. So I'll pass it over to Leaf.
So we were able to get the American Community Survey data from the State Data Center. And we worked on that today. It's the citizens' voting age population. About 6 o'clock on Friday, we determined that, yes, we had to use that. There are some issues with it. And I was hoping that we would be able to use the Public Law 94-171 file. It also has a table for 18 years old and above, and it does not have the same issues. And it's an actual count of people as opposed to a survey, but particularly the law states that we need to use the American Community Survey data and the citizens' voting age population data. Now, again, we need to show that for each map that we do, but that's not the data we balance the population with, thankfully, because it's not very accurate and it has some other issues, the way it was disaggregated down to the block level. And there's a lot of different rounding of the data going on. So the census data from the Public Law 94-171 is what we will be using. So when you look at these maps that I can show you, they're going to basically have 2 sets of data, one for straight population for balancing and one for citizens voting age population. If there is an issue with the majority and minority population, then that's what we look at, is the voting age population. So we could start off by showing you the data for the current supervisorial districts, the 2011, with the 2020 data, which I think we've all seen, but we have the voting age population now, so we can publish that to our website. I've done a little bit of work on the first map that Peter had me look at. I have a concept map that took into account the public comment as of our September 30th meeting, but also includes a lot of, it would go somewhat towards satisfying some of the comment we got in the previous meeting about reducing the size of the 5th district and making it more of a coastal district. In addition, I have a map that I've tried to incorporate these descriptions. So we'll show that map as well. And she can tell me if I came close to her descriptions or not. Hopefully I did. So there's about 3 or 4 maps, and we can look at each one in turn. So if you want, Chairman, I could share my screen now.
You're muted, Chair.
Leaf, are you proposing that we move on to item number 6? I think so. Well, let's just make sure there's no.
If we're done with this item,
on...
that's up to you. I'm sorry, I may be jumping the gun here.
Yeah, no. Is there any commissioner comment on item number 5? Looks like Charlotte has something to say.
I think Leaf is talking about both item number 5 and item number 6. Item number 5, he was going to share his screen, I think, to show the first draft map that he has done that is simply it isn't proposing that we keep the same lines, but just a map of the current districts that were determined in 2011 with the current 2020 census data for population, and then a chart that accompanies it that addresses the demographics that require the citizen voting age population data. So the numbers don't match up, as he was saying, but just the address the ethnic and racial makeup of the citizen voting age population. So I think if we could do that, and he could share the map, and there could be discussion and then public comment, then close that out. As to item 6, I'm not sure if we have draft maps yet that we can share, because we don't have them prepared with the ACS, the American Community Surveys data that Leif was talking about. Maybe he can correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't know that we had any yet ready, since it has only been one business day since we received that ACS data. So staff may need more time to provide additional draft maps, and but I again defer to Leif on that.
Okay. Just trying to follow the rules. That makes sense. Go ahead, Lee.
Okay, for item 5, I'm going to share my screen at this point. So this is a map you're probably familiar with. This is the current 2011 supervisorial districts. And you're going to get the 2010 population. Here's the adjusted 2020 population, which was 91,000. Excuse me, I'm going to zoom in a bit. 91,624. Here's the adjusted population for each district. And there's the new average, 18,325. And that's my lights. Didn't like that. So here's where they deviate from the average. Again, the average 18,325. So you can see, as we've stated before, the 3rd district is 6.81% over the average, and the 4th district is 8.9 below the average. With the adjusted data, the variation between the least populated district and the most populated district actually increased a bit. It's now 14.7%. And let me bring up the just wanted to show this right here. This is our for each district. This is the 2020 CVAP, or Citizens Voting Age population, from the American Community Survey. And you have your total population. This is all 18-year-olds and above for each district. Hispanic, non-Hispanic, then your core racial groups from similar to the census is white, Black, American Indian, Asian, Hawaiian, Pacific Islander. So you can see the numbers there. And that's the data we need for each map that we publish. So hopefully we can generate that for each map. We haven't done so yet, but when we look at some of these other maps on item 6, I have some data there that represents that. So I believe we can show you those maps that we've calculated that data for already. So I don't know if there's any questions on this. This is, I know Peter asked me a question earlier that I submitted to him in writing. When you look at the official map from 2011, it's slightly different than this. It has nice straight borders, more angular. And the reason being is, why is there a difference? Well, as I mentioned in previous meetings, in the past, we've always used voter precincts to as the building blocks to aggregate district boundaries. And what we would do, the process would be to take the census blocks and get a best fit and aggregate them into each of their voter precincts, so that we could then move the voter precincts around, and we drew the boundary based on the voter precinct. This time around, it's pretty obvious that we're going to need to use the census block itself as the smallest unit. It actually gives you a finer granularity because in many cases it's a smaller geographic area and allow you to make finer adjustments. So the boundary you're seeing here is a best fit of the 2020 blocks to the 2011 boundaries. And, you know, if it wasn't more confusing, the block geography from 2010 isn't always the same block geography in 2020. So some of these blocks have changed shape, and that made my job a little extra difficult in trying to get a best fit for these boundaries. A lot of these boundaries, especially in the interior, away from urban areas, have in many cases very little population or no population. That's not always the case, especially when you get around Ukiah or Willits or some of these other areas. But when you get around a more densely populated area, you generally have smaller blocks, and you're able to fine tune that a bit. But this was my best attempt at matching the block geography to our current boundaries, and that's why the shapes aren't exactly the same. And with that, if there's any other questions, I can.
Peter, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to thank Lee for further clarifying. That has been kind of gnawing at me. I first noticed it right after our last meeting, that when you look at the official Board of Supervisor boundary map that we have had posted for the last 10 years, the lines between District 3 and District 4, and District 4 and District 5, and District 3 and District 5 are very different than the lines on this map that we're looking at right now. And so it's a little, I guess the way and maybe Leaf can help me with this in terms of getting my mind wrapped around it. This map, the one we're looking at now, is a starting point rather than a reflection of what the current lines actually are. It's a starting point towards looking at the way they're going to have to be. That doesn't mean that these lines are the ones that are going to be in place when we finish, but it tells us based on the census blocks where we're going to have to move lines in order to get to those population and demographic equalizations that need to be done in order to satisfy the redistricting criteria that we've been talking about earlier this evening. Is that correct, Leaf?
Well, in that you're not held to these lines. No, you're not. And again, it's the best attempt to get the current 2020 population. But
that's not really the lines for District 4 today. And that's not really the lines for District 3 today, or District 5, or District 2. But those are the census block lines. And so they would correspond as close as you can get to the lines that actually exist today. And it's just disconcerting because when you see some things like this bulge, I'm looking at this bulge, you can't see me pointing my pen at the screen right now, but when you look at that bulge that goes into the district, that one, yep, that one, that's not on the map. That's not on the official map. But when you look at it, you go, why is that there? That doesn't make much sense, kind of thing. So, and then you've got this just below it, this little kind of looks like a narrow can. Yeah, that one. Yeah, right there. That bulges again. It throws you. To me, it threw my mind off a little bit. But I can understand what you're saying. That's where those census tract lines jig and jag. And while they don't correspond to the actual lines that currently exist under the county ordinance that adopted lines for 2011. But for purposes of our purposes, they're the best lines to start working from. So I'll buy that. At least I don't know how the other commissioners kind of digest it, but I'll buy into that for the time being, because we're going to move those lines to equalize the population. So while this is informative at this point, it doesn't mean that's where we're going to be when this map is adopted, or a map is adopted by the Board of Supervisors. But it does. So thank you for helping me get my mind wrapped around that, and also it does. I think it's going to sort of impact it when you start to start plotting new lines to equalize population.
Well, you're correct.
Very different map.
You're correct, and it's not a mirror image of the 2011 boundaries. And when we get to our next item, I'll bring in that boundary layer and we can explore that a little bit if you want. So that that all the commissioners can see the difference.
Do we have any more comment from the commissioners on this item? And any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Thank you, Sherry. Well, let's move on to item number 6 then, and let's drum roll, see a map. Charlotte, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to clarify for this item with number 6, consideration of maps. My understanding is we don't have additional draft maps ready yet to share, because we have to incorporate the data that is required to reflect also the demographics. But I want to hear from staff on that. I may be confused about that.
I will show the maps if I have the data, and I think I do on a couple of them. I will take a look first before I display them, but I have been working on them this afternoon, and I did want to show you a couple examples. And if I don't have the voting age population, then I can't show you those maps this time.
And we also, just to clarify, we also want to be sure that when we're sharing a map that they're shared with the public and posted on our website. I don't know that we've been able to publish those maps yet. I think the only map that has been published yet, and because it has only been a business day or two, is the map we just saw.
So a question, if I may, Chairman Farmer, that if we show the data tonight, is it possible to show the maps, or do they actually, can we publish them, say, tomorrow on our website?
Charlotte?
It would be my recommendation that they're published prior to the meeting, and that then the public has a chance to comment on them and be familiar with them. And I think we may need more time for that. I would suggest at the next meeting, sharing the draft maps that are ready with the ACS data. And it could also be the maps considering, today's public comment that was discussed. There may be a few maps to be able to share, but it would depend on staff being able to prepare them, then also being able to share them and post them.
Mary, I see you have your hand raised.
I understand what you're saying. However, my concern is we added this extra meeting so we could start looking at maps because we're kind of got this really, really close deadline. And while it'd be nice to put it out in advance, if there are maps that we are just looking at, I think that they could be published tomorrow and probably be okay. But that's my opinion.
Do I understand correctly, Leaf, that the mapping program that you work on, you're not going to be able to integrate the census data, the voting age data, because it's kind of too messy. So you're going to have to do the work with that other data, and then each time you do that, then calculate the voting age data on top of the work you did?
Chairman Farmer, no, what we had to do is to make sure that the table was in a usable form that works with our mapping tools. So we were able to accomplish that. So we're going to use that same table for every, in other words, we've added that data as other new fields to our existing data, so that when we operate the redistricting extension on our software, it will show both sets of data.
Okay.
So, and I'll explain that with the map that I can show you right now.
Well, Peter, go ahead.
Well, man, I may be a wimp on this, but my experience on redistricting battles is that whatever we do and we say in these meetings is on the public record, and it could potentially impact the county's ability to defend its redistricting. And so when the legal counsel advises us that they would prefer not to examine maps in a public meeting like this before they're published for the public to examine, I'm inclined to go along with that, because I believe that can be a bit of a problem in a litigating process. I would hope, however, that that presumably these maps that Leaf's working on now would soon become available. Our next meeting is on the 20th, as I understand it. I would hope that, unless council has an objection, that those maps would be sent to all the commissioners as they're published on and given to made available to the public, so that at least we can start looking at them individually and considering what they mean to us in terms of our initial reaction. And then we can come prepared to talk about them and whatever concerns or questions we might have about those maps that would be published between the 12th and the 20th. So I'm just expressing my own sense of, I think it may be worthwhile being cautious. I would hate us to be in a situation where a court found that we acted inappropriately and it jeopardized the county's potential defense of whatever maps the board adopted.
Mary?
If we're using section meetings to change maps, there's no way you can publish what it is you may create ahead of time. You can publish what you have with data and what you've worked on. But if we're actually using a meeting to create change, I think you can't give it in advance. You have to give it the next day. And again, I understand the legal. I hear you, but I can't see how we can develop and have the public in advance know what it is we're developing. Does that make sense?
Charlotte?
Yes, and it does make sense, and I understand the confusion. I think what I'm saying is there are maps that Leaf is in the middle of preparing based on the public comment that we've received from the commission and the public to date. And remember, we've only had a meeting just 2 business days ago, and the data had just come out the day before, and was another set of data was received the next day. So I want to advise the commission that we are certainly moving very quickly, and I don't think that we're stalling, or the commission is stalling any process by taking the time to complete the draft maps that we're creating based on the public comment, and then sharing with the public and the commission. I don't think that there's been a significant delay, but I agree, once we have draft maps, and then in the meeting, when after those maps have been released and shared with the public and with the commission, we can certainly look at them, and the commission can discuss adjusting boundaries, and to see maybe even if it's possible in real time how moving certain boundaries affects communities of interest and the population numbers. There is that is certainly feasible. It's just at this point we don't have a draft map that has been published, and that's all that I'm cautioning about. I think when you look at other counties throughout the state, we're not behind. I think we're actually moving very quickly. And I don't know if there are many counties or any counties that have shared draft maps yet, because of the fact that the data has just been released, the state adjusted data, about a week ago. And then that does require some time to analyze and then create for staff or any demographer to create a map.
Charlotte, I understand I'm assuming the map that's on Leaf's screen right now we can see, I hope, since it's already there.
Yes.
Okay. I would suggest that let's take a look at this map, and if we want to keep on discussing whether or not we want to push back against legal advice, we can do that after we have spent some time on this one, since it's in front of us.
Okay, what you're seeing before you here is it's the current 2011 boundaries. The black outline is the official boundary that was adopted by the board in 2011. And then the colored shapes, when I zoom in, you'll see are the best fit that I've created for that boundary. So I want to show you one of the, we talked about one of the big blobs that sort of come out. And when you take a look at that. Okay, that's one census block. So, and these are, the green are addresses that I have. Now, I don't know if those are commercial or residential, but they're address points that I have. And I can see it was kind of an even split. There's quite a few up in here, but there's also quite a few down the road around here. It's, sometimes and that one actually has a good bit of population. I can show you that. Again, this is straight population here. Total population was 27 people. So in other words, you're split right down the middle. So it's a 50-50. Who do you give it to? And there's only 27 people. Here's another block that's split. Let me get that out of the way. And this one was given to the 3rd district as opposed. And there really are no address points that we have here. And that's not a de facto meaning that there's no one living there. It just gives us another indication of how to allocate that block. And again, we can look at that block and we can see there's only 6 people. So, we gave 27 here, we gave 6 here. it does tend to balance out as opposed to being not a really, and you can see here where this block boundaries, probably because they were based on old school district lines, the blocks actually followed the voter precincts. So we got a pretty good match there. And again, it's following precincts here. We got a pretty good match. Here's one of those little areas that stick out. And again, there's 0 people showing from the census data that live in that one. Here's another one. In this block, that's a toss-up. You know, we gave 27 people up here. How many people did we give here on this particular block? Well, they're saying only 3 people live in this block. So I suspect there might be more, but that's what the census is telling us. Again, here you can see where these little indentations where it's not a straight line. It's because we're following block boundaries. And again, there's 5 people that live in that one. This one straddles the line. There's 25 people that live there. You know, this one straddles the line. There's another 7 people that live there. So it's kind of an up and down as to where we put them. In this case over here, I'll zoom in a little bit because this is, you started getting into urban areas like the town of Mendocino and different subdivisions. Here's a pretty good sized block, and you can see most of it is going to be in the 5th district, even though parts of it are going to go up into the 4th district. Most of the people living here are going to be down here where these address points are shown. So, you know, that was pretty obvious that we would give that block to the 5th district. And that's the process that I went through to try to get a best fit. And we'll go over to some other areas here and I can show you other examples of that. Again, we were kind of lucky here. The boundary pretty much followed blocks in those cases, as well as this area here. Those are block boundaries, except for this block up here. And you can see this block is quite a large block. And it does come into the 5th district, but when you look at it, a lot of it goes right up to the city of Willits. So it's kind of an obvious fit to put that into the 3rd district as opposed to the 5th district. And again, here you are not following the boundary, but again, we're following blocks. Give you an idea, when I click on here, you can see the size of these blocks. That's a pretty good sized block, and it goes a little bit over here, a little bit over here. Most of it's over here. This is an odd, very odd block where the vast majority of the people are living right down here in the 1st district. So that was given to the 1st district, even though a little piece of it extends into the 5th district. One of the ones that was pretty difficult, we get around the city of Ukiah, the blocks are pretty good, except for this one. This block is different than it was in 2010. This block now includes the hillside part where I believe before it was split down along the city boundary. So there wasn't much I can do because the vast majority of the population all live inside the city boundary. So it was an obvious choice to, you know, give that to the city as opposed to going all the way into the city and putting that in the 5th district. A little bit more problematic down here. These are pretty good sized blocks. It's mostly grazing resource lands. Not a lot of folks living out there. You can see that's a pretty big sized block. And even though most of it, the area wise, would be in the 5th district, most of the addresses are up here in the 1st district. And again, this one here has very little population, even though a piece of it comes down here. And this was a very odd shaped one, even though you have a couple of addresses here. This is mostly in the Russian River Estates subdivision. That's where most of the population in this particular block live. So that was a hard decision, and it's just connected by a narrow strip. You can see as I flash on that block. So I did give that to the 5th district, as well as this one. This one could have been a toss-up, but it wouldn't have been a very compact looking boundary if I put this in and create a very narrow strip up in here. And there wasn't a ton of population in that particular one, 22 people. So I'm trying to balance and give it the best fit of blocks that I can, and making sure I'm getting hopefully the right populations. So that kind of explains, in some cases, it's the same. In other areas, it deviates a bit. I don't think I deviated very far.
Can you hold that just for 1 second so I can you put those green dots back on it just for 1 second, please?
You want me to zoom into any particular area?
No, thank you. I just took a screenshot. That's works. Dee, please go ahead.
So again, this is just an
Sorry,
attempt.
Dee, Leaf, real quick. Dee has had her hand raised for a little bit.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, I just wanted to clarify with Leaf that, so the map you showed us before, that it's just the current boundaries, but just adjusted around, to the best of your ability, around current census blocks. So if this should be one of the maps that we suggest. It's basically no changes or very little changes. The only change in the lines would be determined by where current census blocks are. Right?
Correct. It's our best attempt to
this is our best attempt to leave things the way they are.
It's our best attempt to apply 2020 census data to the current boundaries, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So I think this should be one of our maps, in that this is representative of if we made no changes. Only technical change is following current census block lines, but overall, it's really no change to the district map the way it was drawn before.
Except for this one would have us at 14% deviation, so we would have to do at least those changes.
Right. Yeah.
It does. From like the finger. I guess what's going on with the finger from District 1 that coming over the top of 2 in this map? How did that change that little finger?
Well, the blocks are a little bit different than they were in 2010. So you can see this block here. There's quite a number of people all along here, but it does include some people here and here. But I had to give that to the 2nd district, whereas before we had a split here, and that's why that boundary is drawn there back in 2011. But otherwise, all this population here is represented in the 1st district. Let's see what the population is here.
And what does that block shape look like?
There's 102 people in this block. And here's basically, there's a row of houses here, and an area of housing here, and then an area of housing up here. So my guess is the vast majority of the people who live in this particular block live in the 2nd district. And that's why when you had to make a choice, do I put it in the 1st or the 2nd? We put it in the 2nd district.
And how many people live in the District 1 block there to the right, to the east?
This one? There's a number of blocks here. But this one right here?
Or what about that whole quadrant, that whole finger there? I guess there's an industrial section.
That's over
houses.
here, right?
Yeah. I wish we could have our mice on the same map, but yeah, this whole sort of finger that comes out from District 1 into northern Ukiah.
That whole purple area, Kyle?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking
Well,
Or
let's
did-
find out. I'm going to just plug those into an unassigned area. And then we can look at the unassigned statistics.
707.
Which would be 1,107. Yes, correct.
Thank you. Leaf, could we do the same thing for the area of Ukiah south that's in the 5th, that's south of?
We can. Do you want to keep this amount here open so that we can get a total tabulation, or do you want to just look at that separately?
I would like, I mean, I just took a note of it. It would be a shame to have to recalculate that number too many times, because I do feel like that's an important, piece of all these puzzles, are the areas of Ukiah that are being, in other districts.
Well, do you want to assign them to District 1? Then you can see what the changes in the population would be like.
Sure. Sorry, assigning those to District 2, correct?
Oh, you want to assign them to District 2? Okay.
They're currently in District 1, am I right?
That's correct. You're right. So we have a split here. Some of these are in District 1 and some of these are in District 5. And I can increase this data a bit for you.
I mean, I think Dee would have a lot of her questions answered if we just found out if you took all of those where there's lots of dots, I mean, to be overly simplistic here, and we found out really how many people would be in District 2 at that point. I think that would settle a lot of questions just to know that number.
Yeah, I think you'll see that some of the maps I've been working on have that, but just to take a look at the map we're working with now. You're saying here's a whole row of blocks. And, depending on how far out you want to go.
Dee, could you answer that question?
I think we went down to I think my description went down to 253. South Ukiah down to 253, and then it cut up into the hills. I gave you actual.
Yes, yeah.
But for the moment, where do you want the hills or the most flatland?
Yeah, it would be along the highway, and then at least in those big blocks that are all District 5 now, to the east of those or west of those. Yeah, at least that. The one more, yeah, that one.
That would bring you to 253. for the most part.
I think it needs to go a little bit further south.
You want to include all the way up to 253 here, or
Yeah, just on the eastern side, yeah.
that is 253 right there.
Yeah, it's 253, okay, not the one down below. Okay, perfect.
We took in these from the first district.
Lee, can we get the number before we grab the first district? Sorry, it might be too late. It would be nice to know what's in the fifth, or is that something we'll be able to pull back out?
So you can see taking out that northerly area from District 1 has set them quite a bit below the average. Increased the second district quite a bit above the average, and decreased their the fifth district. Yeah, fifth district is now quite a bit below the average as well. Again, that's the deviation from that average of 18,325. And I'll just zoom out real quick so you can see what the change was on that. See, this one wraps all the way around, so theoretically you should have probably picked up these, although you don't have a lot of population there. But to be compact, you would have had to pick up these as well. So I'll just go ahead and do that because we're not supposed to leave donut holes.
That's a big one.
Well, these are low population areas, but those particular ones. Yeah, it doesn't really increase your deviation much more than it already was. So, but anytime you're in this area or in this area, you have high density. So even small areas are a lot of population. Whereas if you're out in the hills somewhere, you can have some big blocks, but you only have 32 people there. So that's one of the that's just the nature of our geography and our population.
So it might, in terms of that, the southern Ukiah section, how many people did that get us? We had a 1,107 in the northern first district finger. And how many Ukiahans are not in the second district on the south side currently?
I can give you a total figure and you can subtract it. It would be easier. Let me just take a look real quick here. That other one was 1107.
Yes.
So we added about another 2,009 people.
And then, and the Hispanic
in this-
population in the northern finger was 392.
You mean this area right up in here, the total area?
Yeah, the Hispanic population in that finger was 392. So what would the subtraction get us on the southern side?
Hispanic?
Yes, please. And Charlotte, I know we can't make decisions purely on that, but that will give us some information on reaching out to people to submit community of interest letters if they do feel like that would sort of could push us to, as we're already going to do, to reach out even more.
I don't have that figure that I can give you that quickly.
Okay. But D, we're looking at these numbers. We're looking at a 22%. Sorry, where did they go? Thought I had it,
Oh, right here.
but it was 16, and then -8 and -8, and then the 2 6s cancel each other out, right? So 24%.
You mean the variation between the lowest and highest?
Mm-hmm. Well, variation between the lowest and the highest, assuming because we could very easily trade that +6 for -6, but you'd still have a 8%. So 16 plus 8 would be 24.
Yeah, I'd still like to see the boundaries that I suggest, the whole thing with all the changes in all 5 districts, but
Yeah.
but just, I mean, just looking at this, because I think, I don't know, it's,
That would be your variation between your highest and lowest,
The 22.
21.77. Yeah. If I can get,
Okay.
if I can get the maps to Sherry and get them on our website, then I suspect, this week I can get them out to the commissioners to at
Great.
least look at some of the boundaries and the numbers involved.
Could we, if does anybody else have anything they'd like Leaf to look at for us? In that case, could we put everything back and just take a look at Hopland real quick?
Um, New fourth district. Yes. So here's Hopland. And when we're talking about the something here that would help. There's your Hopland census designated place. And again, the census designated place is an attempt by the Census Bureau to consistently tabulate data for unincorporated communities that have no legal boundaries. So when they tabulate data for a city from one census to the next, they can give you consistent data because it has an actual boundary, but unincorporated communities don't have a boundary. And so they've developed these census designated places, of which we have about 15, including our 4 incorporated cities. Now, when you're looking at one of these, most people would consider their community of interest, say the people here or the people here. Their community of interest is probably Hopland, same with the people in the general vicinity. All this is, this is encircling Old Hopland and Old Hopland, pretty much the business districts and the areas of more tightly controlled street patterns is generally how they do that. So one of the things that I was looking at when I was trying to say, well, how do you make the 5th district smaller? Would be to come down Highway 101 and try to at least bring the 5th district, make sure it doesn't go east of 101. But then you don't want to, you have to follow your criteria. So you don't want to split at least the census designated place. So that's something to, when you're thinking about it, be aware of. One of the other,
and what's the difference? Where is the Russian River watershed ridge line?
I'll add that for you right now. There's your watersheds.
Okay.
Boundaries.
Paula, I see your hand. I'm sorry. I'm deeply hypnotized by the green dots.
I can imagine. Well, when he was done with this explanation, I actually wanted to go over to the kind of the area between 4th and 5th district in that Casper area and see a little more detail of that if we've got time. I know we got more of an agenda.
So before we leave here, Leaf, when you do kind of run down the 101 corridor and then the farming hills to the east, what is the population there? I guess, unfortunately, maybe not being able to encapsulate as many of the western hills as I might hope. Looks like,
well,
how populated they are.
If you're taking that much area and that much population, you're going to have to get rid of it somewhere else in the 1st district.
Mm-hmm.
And being that Ukiah already has quite a few people. You can get rid of a little bit of population there, but you're still going to have to get rid of more population. You're also taking away from the 5th district. It has a little leeway. I mean, it has around 600 people and still could lose 600 people and still be within the deviation with its current population. But there were other, I know there was other public comment about bringing this line up here to the, at least the road 409 boundary. And I know there was comment about making the 5th district more coastal and less large. So if it's going to have roughly the same shape and you get that much area and population, then other areas are going to have to change. And I think when we see the other maps, you'll get a better idea of the population numbers.
Yeah, this must be frustrating for you, Leaf, not being able to show us the maps. We're having you redo the work you already did without the aid of your homework. So I appreciate you humoring us. Paula, on to you, please. I'll mute myself.
So
Okay. Had you heard that, Leaf? I see you're still moving around. Kind of that area of the division between 4th and 5th, obviously.
this is where the current boundary is right now. And these are the blocks that we aggregated to for the 5th district. And these are the blocks in this greenish color we aggregated for the 4th district. And you can see this is the Casper census designated place. I'm not so sure I would have drawn that big a boundary for Casper, but somebody did.
It does go pretty far east. So wait a minute, you're moving a little fast for me here. So there you go, back there. So the, I guess that is that an orange line? Is that part of Casper? Where are you going here?
Okay, here's what most people would consider Casper right here. I can zoom in a little bit and show you if you want.
Sure.
So there's your sort of business district and you know some of the residential areas.
Okay.
We get down below here, and then you have the Casper Beach and the little campground, and then you have this subdivision here. And the reddish orange boundary is the census designated place boundary. You know, you have a few more people out here and more people to the north. I'll zoom out and you can see the full.
All right. I would appreciate that.
And just for, you know, at one point, decades ago, Casper was in the 5th district. But over time, that district line between the 4th and 5th has moved south. And I know at one of our meetings, there was someone who made a comment that they would like to see that brought back up to the road 409 at least. And that's possible, you know, given other alternatives, what other things you do to the boundaries elsewhere.
Okay.
But it is possible.
I know the Mendocino folk are, okay, to move that one. I know the Mendocino folk are pretty vocal. They like being in the 4th district. They don't feel that they have an alignment with the 4th. In the 4th, they want to stay in the 5th. At least the comments I've had. So I just wanted to see how far south into Casper you got 409. Okay, I can visualize that a little better.
See, it goes right up to the Surfwood subdivision.
Okay.
There's the current boundary line right there.
Jack Peters Creek.
Yeah, that's Russian Gulch.
Where's Jack Peters Creek?
That would be,
It's
wouldn't that
Russian
be down
Gulch.
here more? I don't have those on this particular map. Let's see if we can change out maps here. Base maps.
The boundary line is through Russian Gulch. So the Jack Peters is
Good, and
in
not
the
down to
5th.
Jack Peters, to the south. Yes, okay.
Yeah, I believe that's right down here where the CDP line is.
Okay. All right.
Leaf, could we move north
Thank
and look
you.
at Peter's Humboldtian Mendocinans area? Imagine not too many green dots there.
So you got Leggett here and you have Laytonville here.
Hmm.
And then you got Bell Springs and Spy Rock
Wow.
area up in here. That's where you're getting those. But as you get closer to the river here, you tend to get less people on the east side of that river.
And not a lot of people in that little piece that juts out. Right back to the
I
boundary.
believe there were 27 people according to the census. Yes, 27 total
Okay.
population. Although we have a few more addresses, but again, you have to be careful of addresses because the Census Bureau only counts you in an area if you live there more than 6 months out of the year. So if you only live there 5.5 months out of the year, they count you somewhere else. So.
So Peter, in your experience, meeting people, do Bell Springs residents drive north or south?
I don't know. I can't answer that question, but I think that once you, I'm waiting for the map to sort of zoom out a little bit.
Just okay. Just to give you an idea too, this layer I just opened up here are Native American lands, at least those that we have mapped. It's always a changing picture as the different tribes acquire land, and sometimes it's put into trust and sometimes it's not. But just to give you an idea, Peter, of if you're heading up and trying to pick up blocks in this northern area, this is the native lands for the Round Valley Reservation. So you got a lot of smaller parcels around here, but you can see how far it extends to the north and to the west. The actual reservation boundary is quite large as well.
Mm-hmm.
You also have the same issue. You have another rancheria here in Laytonville too. And I looked at the numbers there, because I know the public comment has been, well, what if we put Laytonville in the 4th district? How would that dilute the voting concentration of Native Americans in the, in the 3rd district? And you still have the most highest density of Native Americans in that 3rd district.
Can you take the Indian lands off the map for a moment? Yeah. So there's a big chunk of Indian land up on Buck Mountain drainage, but there aren't very many people out there. And so I'm not sure it dilutes any votes if you take that, you follow the Buck Mountain drainage over and then bring it across to north of Laytonville. I don't see where you're really impacting a lot of Indian population, unless that area where you've got your hand right now is populated by a concentration of Native Americans. And is that the area we're talking about? Which way they go, I don't know.
Yeah, when we start, we could take a look at that. When I generate the correct data for your map, we can certainly take a look and zero in on that and see what the population is.
Yeah, in the second iteration of the map that I sent you, Leaf, I tried to avoid the Round Valley drainage area, the drainage basin for Round Valley, because the concentration of Native people in the Covelo area. But I don't think we have to. I guess I'm not as concerned about where Native lands are if there aren't people on them. Whether they're in one supervisorial district or another doesn't dilute that vote. Just because there's Native reservation land someplace, if there aren't people living on it, I don't see how that impacts their vote or their voting ability as a vote block. But you know, I've sent to Leaf 2 requests to sort of refine this idea. I'm happy to wait to actually see what he comes up with before discussing it, so that we have an actual sense of what that might mean. I think spending time looking at this map at this point isn't going to do much good. But that's me. I don't know how the other commissioners feel.
Oh, I see your hand.
Not mine. Or should lower my hand.
Okay. Is there any more commissioner comment on this item? And do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. We can move on to community outreach.
And Chair Farmer, if I may, I just would like to verify with Leaf. Leaf, this is the map that you just showed is the one we do have published. It's right. It's the 2011 map with the 2020 data. Just
Correct.
making sure. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. And Chair Farmer, for community outreach, I just have, we are continuing with our PSAs. We also have updates in the newspaper, and we are still continuing to send out our e-notifications.
And Paul and I should be talking with Sarah Wright from KZYX on Thursday.
Got a friend there.
You talking about my cat?
I'm talking about your cat, man.
She is ridiculous. My wife was teaching music together all through COVID, and this was like what every music together class was like.
An own metronome. Animal metronome.
Chair,
I have.
Sherry?
Go on, Sherry.
oh, I can go after Paula. I apologize.
Oh, sorry. I thought that.
That's
Sherry.
okay. I just wanted to also say I have reached out again to KGUA and the Coast radio station in Fort Bragg about either doing an interview or making sure they got our information. And they'd already had the flyers come out. The League of Women Voters had a meeting today, and they are doing some publishing of it, and they are kind of trying to spread the word also. So we'll keep going, and I've been addressing that. I will continue to address the health centers in our community, in our county. There's a network of health centers, and they've got the flyers. So just that as my update. I'm done now.
Tomorrow I'll be just submitting public comment to the Redwood Valley MAC meeting, and then the 30th to the Hopland MAC meeting. But I'm just in the beginning, 3 minutes of public comment to the meeting. That's all they requested. Dee, you had mentioned in an earlier.
So did any other
agenda.
MAC?
Sorry?
Did any of the other MACs reach out to you? I've not
No.
heard from the ones I tried to contact.
No.
Okay.
And the one that it's,
So Redwood
would be
Valley.
important, but did not have any information online to contact was Laytonville. I don't know if that's something that
Huh.
they did not have an email address or a phone number on their to be submitted to. But if anybody knows how to contact them, we should do that. And Dee, you had mentioned reaching out to Uva again.
Yeah, I have a
or
couple
how
of
to-
names for the Latinx community. Roseanne Ibarra and then the mayor of Ukiah. I'll reach out to them.
Sounds good. I'd like to meet him too. He seems like a cool guy.
Mm.
Anybody else? Sherry?
Oh, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to state that when Commissioner Zairi had mentioned the supervisor who had put up an update in the papers, there was an update. It was a District 3 supervisor, and I think it was stated District 5, but District 3 had put some information.
Yeah, he does a good job with those letters.
Thank you.
He does.
So if there's no more commissioner comment on this item other than from Bubbles, do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay. So I'm just going to check with Sherry. Last time I ran through the meetings, is that something that I should do, or is that something that's published and I just need to mention the meetings? I don't want to waste anybody's time.
You do not have to list all of them. It is published.
Okay, perfect. That's what I figured. We do have the 20th meeting, and then the the November 3rd meeting, right? And that's what we got.
We also had him.
Dee?
No, just talking to myself, sorry.
Okay. Do we have any comments on the meetings that we have left? And is there any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Are our meetings, are our meetings being posted, recorded and posted on the agenda webpage?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so anybody who wants to take a look at any of our meetings to date, they'd be able to go to that webpage and get a link to watch them on YouTube or on the county. Is that correct?
Correct. They could do the Mendocino County Redistricting page and click on the workshops tab in the agenda, and they're listed in there to be watched. The agendas are posted and all the attachments and the link to this recording.
Sounds good. So Leaf mentioned he's going to be able to send us the maps as he gets them. So by the time we come to the next meeting, we'll have been able to review them, and it should be a very productive meeting. So agenda item number 9, we'll talk about the proposed agenda items for the upcoming meeting. I will read these out so we can, actually I won't. Does everybody have these on them? Because last time I read them out, but internet connection was bad. So then we thought we were missing something, but we do have consideration of maps based on community input, which, you know, is the important one that we thought that we didn't have last time. And is there any other items that we think we should include in the agenda? Charlotte?
I just wanted to add in the staff updates, and we don't have to specifically list out all of the staff updates today in this, but I will address an update on, you know, the legal analysis around the substantial equal population question that Commissioner Pallison asked for. So I'll make sure to have something at the next meeting for that.
Sounds good. Okay, any commissioner input on the proposed agenda? Okay, so if it hasn't changed, then I guess we don't need to have a motion on this. Is there any public comment on the proposed agenda?
No public comment.
Okay. I think we can adjourn the meeting in that case, if Bubbles agrees.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kyle.